first Mentoring Monday, and grab yourself a glass of water. We're going to go through everything in a bit of detail. This is the basics. We're going to be looking at how to purchase your first property, how to get a mortgage, what sort of deposit you're going to need, all the basics in terms of purchasing investment property. So let's head over to the studio and let's get stuck into it. So guys, welcome to our very first Mentoring Monday. And actually today we're going to be going through the basics of buying your first buy-to-let property. So even if you've got a few, I hope that some of the tips that I give you here, you could amalgamate into your plan and maybe it can help you. And if you're new to investing in property, you're going to find this really, really helpful. So bear in mind, this video is going to be a little bit longer than normal because we're going to go through everything in much, much more detail. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can give you as much value as possible, completely free of charge on my YouTube channel. What we're going to do is we're going to look at how we're going to create a plan that's fit to your circumstances. We're then going to look at what team you need to get around you and how you're going to find those people. We're going to look at how much of a deposit you're going to need in order to purchase your first property, the mortgage system and how that all operates and all the options that are available to you, what sort of credit score you're going to need, what to do if you've got adverse credit, how to go about repairing your credit, all that sort of stuff. I've helped lots of people with that. Whether you should be buying in a limited company or using your personal name. And again, I've got my own opinions on that. At the end of the day, you can take on my point of view and adapt it to your own personal circumstances and hopefully come up with something that's right for you. So let's take it from the top and creating a plan. So this is a very wholesome part that's very specific to yourself. And the plan will be different from person to person. Now, what I would say is you need to have a good idea of your end destination. What are you trying to achieve by investing in property? And then you need to know over what time scale, and you need to know where you are today. So depending on the size of the pot of money that you have to invest, your aims and objectives, the amount of income you've got, and the time scale that you're looking to do this over would greatly vary the plan that you would come up with. Now, if we took an average person who I'm speaking to, and the average person I'm speaking to has got between 50 and 70K, they own a property, they've got a good job, they're earning 5 or 6 grand a month, and they're investing 2 or 3 grand a month out of that money. That's the sort of average person that I'm speaking to on my channel. I'm not saying that's you, I'm not saying that's average, I'm just saying that's my average person that I'm having conversations with. Now, their plan may be over 10 years to completely replace their income with property investment income. And that's very, very achievable with that sort of money. But I think it's really important that you speak to somebody, get some really wholesome advice and understand how to create a plan. And if you want to have a conversation with me, look in the description, there's a link. Until I get to 1,000 subscribers, it's completely free of charge. And I'll go through your personal circumstances with you and just give you an understanding of what I might do if I was in your situation. But I can guarantee there's a plan for everybody as long as they want to hear it and as long as they want to stick to it. I honestly think that financial freedom in terms of a couple of grand a month is very, very easy and very obtainable for most people within a couple of years. Some people can do it much quicker, within 6 to 12 months. But the reality is with property, quite often, it's a long game. If you're going to purchase a house, for example, it's going to take between 3 and 6 months to complete the transaction, unless you're buying at auction, but generally speaking, it's going to take 3 to 6 months, get mortgages, solicitors, all that sort of stuff done. So it is a long game, and I think you have to be realistic with your timescales. But again, if you talk to somebody who's quite experienced, they'll give you a good idea of what sort of timescales you can expect. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about with you is how to get a team around you and the sort of people you're going to need involved. So I've made a list on the next page. You're going to need an accountant, you're going to need somebody who can help you structure your business or your portfolio in the way that's right for you. You're going to need a really good solicitor. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be someone close to you, but for me, my solicitor, I've got to know, I've done like 15 odd purchases, I've done about 20 odd remortgages. I know my solicitor very, very well. We get on well. She's not the cheapest by any stretch of the imagination, but she does make sure that I'm looked after. You need a really good mortgage broker. Now, again, if you want to speak to my mortgage broker, book a call with me. I'll give you her details. Her name's Clemmy. Absolutely fantastic. In fact, if you DM me on Instagram, I'll give you her details. You don't even have to book a call. Just DM me on Insta and I'll send you Clemmy's details. She is amazing. She'll give you a whole of market appraisal of what she can get for you. And that's bridging finance, mortgages, the lot. So in terms of building team, you're going to need a good building team in the locations that you're investing in. Again, if you wanted to sort of speak to myself, I could certainly give you some advice on the areas that we invest in. And in fact, we provide an end-to-end solution. So if you wanted to tap in on that experience, you could. But otherwise, places like My Builder, they're sort of public curated. So, you know, if somebody's got 50, 100 positive ratings, the public have kind of voted their work good. So I would say that, you know, using platforms like that to find a building team really has been very, very successful for us. And the last thing you're going to need, and one of the most important things, is a managing agent. Assuming your plan was to create a property investment portfolio, not a job in property, those are two very, very different things, and I'll explain the difference when we go back. You're going to need a really good managing agent. Because really what you want to do is just have one point of contact for all of your properties, all of your tenants, just somebody looking after the whole lot for you and making sure it's all ticking over. So I would suggest making sure you've got a really, really good managing agent. And that doesn't mean the cheapest managing agent. That means somebody who's really, really good. Nitpicking over 1 or 2% in order to get it a little bit cheaper may not serve you in the long run. So back to the other page, I just want to explain the difference between investing in property and creating a job in property, because those are two very, very different things. Now for me, when I put in an investment, it's an investment of equity with an expected return over time. When I'm creating a job in property, it's something that I'm doing every day. Now, a good example would be my investment portfolio probably has, I don't know, about, there's 13 properties, 10 of them are HMOs, they've all got 4 or 5 tenants in each. There's probably 50, 60 tenants. Now, none of those tenants have my phone number. If any problems happen to any of the properties, none of them can get hold of me. They deal with the managing agent. So for me, that's an investment. Now, the second that you start managing all those properties, and believe me, 50, 60 tenants, they're going to have some problems. 15 properties, you're going to have some issues. You're going to find that it's a full-time job. And when you're entering property investing, you really have to be clear, are you looking for a job or are you looking for passive income? You need to set your business up completely according to that objective, and then you'll meet it. So the next thing I want to talk about, obviously getting the team around you, that is key. And as I said, I've given you a list of the people that you need. Write them down, make sure you've got an idea, and find people local to you if you can, because it's always useful to be able to meet with people face to face, obviously post-coronavirus, but meeting people face to face, it really does cement relationships and mean that you can do business in a more effective way. The next thing I want to look at is deposits. So you need 25% on a normal buy-to-let or a HMO type mortgage. Now there are ways of borrowing more and putting down less. For example, you can have a residential mortgage. So in residential terms, at the moment you can do a 5% mortgage, and that's just been released and it's government backed. So you could potentially, say for example you had £10,000, well on a 25% deposit you could only borrow £40,000. However, with 5% deposit, you could borrow £200,000. So there's a huge difference between those two numbers, right? Now, if I think back to my very first purchase, I bought my house over in Erith. I put down 10%. I had a £176,000 house. I paid £17,600 for the deposit. And then I rented out the 2 spare rooms and I lived in the main master bedroom. Now, that meant that I had an income of £1,000 a month whilst living there. And I also was able to start the capital appreciation on a much larger asset. Now, if I had put that £17,000 into a buy-to-let, I'd have been buying about £80,000 worth of property. No, less, £70,000 worth of property. You can see the difference. The capital appreciation would have been slower. I doubt I'd have been able to rent out the spare rooms for anywhere near what I was able to get in London. So for me, at the beginning of my journey, that was what was appropriate for me. And I'll be honest, I didn't have a plan back then. I was kind of making it up as I went along. I created a very good plan, but it wasn't on purpose. There was purpose behind it, but it wasn't on purpose at the beginning. So I would say look at your situation holistically and decide what is going to be best for you in the short, medium and long term, and then start delivering upon those objectives. And again, if you want to speak to me or someone else like me, it's a really good idea just to go, okay, well, what do you think of this idea? And then we can give you some honest opinions. So once you've got your deposit sorted, let's assume that you're going to buy a £200,000 property. You've got £50,000. As I said, my average viewer has sort of £50,000, £60,000 in savings. They have a good paid job. So let's assume that you're in that position. The next thing you're going to want to do is get a mortgage. So what do you need in order to get this mortgage? There are two main types. The first one is a residential mortgage where you're buying your own home, and the second type is an investment mortgage, buy-to-let, HMO, a product like that. The main difference is the residential mortgage is completely reliant on your financial situation. I mean, it makes sense. You're going to be paying it. An investment mortgage or a buy-to-let mortgage, a HMO mortgage, that's dependent on the rent and the deal and how that all looks, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be paying that mortgage. So it's really important to understand what you're going into. Now, in terms of a residential mortgage, you're going to get about 4.5, 5 times your combined annual salary. So if you earn 25,000, your wife earns 25,000, you earn 50,000 together, your combined salary is 50,000, you're going to be able to borrow about 250,000. Give or take. In terms of investment property, you just need to make sure that you've got the right deposit and the rental multiplier works. And you can do this on pretty much any mortgage calculator, or you can speak to a really good broker, and that would be my recommendation. Get a broker who can go out whole of market. You want them to compare everything on your behalf. If you want to speak to Clemmy, go to Instagram, send me a DM, I'll send you her details straight away. She knows that I'm willing to give it out. I know she's going to be very, very busy. She already is. She's absolutely fantastic. But I would recommend any broker who can give you whole of market and really good, solid advice fit to your circumstances. Now, I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong for you, because I wouldn't know. Without speaking to you and without going into detail, it's really hard to know on an individualized basis. The whole point of these Mentoring Mondays is to give you this sort of complete viewpoint that can be applied to your situation. So let's assume that you've got a mortgage, you've got your deposit. What other things do you need for your mortgage? So they're going to ask you for pay slips if it's going to be proved income. They're going to ask you for any outgoings in terms of car purchases. They're going to ask you for your credit report and your credit profile. I know that it's absolute common sense that credit score would, and just because you've got adverse credit doesn't mean you won't get a mortgage, but you do need to make sure you're speaking to your broker and getting a good idea of what you need to have in terms of your credit score. I know that there's been arbitrary figures thrown around, 700, 800, something like that will be absolutely fine, but if you've missed loads of payments this year, a mortgage probably isn't going to be taking place. But again, get in touch with a broker, get the idea of what you can and can't do, and then start to work to repair it. Nothing you do on your credit score is unrepairable. You can repair everything. And if you haven't got a credit score because you're young, you can start building one. Credit cards, make sure you pay them off at the end of every month. Take out a small loan, take out some small hire purchase things. Suddenly that credit score starts to go up. And by doing that, you're really building the foundations of your ability to pay back money that you borrow. And when banks are looking to lend you money, and that's all mortgages are, a loan, they want to know you've got a track record of being able to deliver on your promises. And that's all that credit score is. It's a track record of what you do when you make a promise. Do you deliver upon that? So the last thing I put on this real basics thing is limited company versus personal name. Now, I want to make it really clear that I'm not an accountant, but I have a good viewpoint on this. Now, I would say if you're approaching this endeavour to make it into a business, it should probably be in a limited company because it's a business. If you're approaching it as a hobby and something that you're just going to put 1 or 2 buy-to-lets together, then it's probably in your personal name. So when you look at the costs and everything that's associated with running a company, if you're just doing it as a hobby, as a sideline of a couple of buy-to-lets, almost always when I look at it, it's going to be better in your personal name. However, if you're taking it seriously and you're going to build a big portfolio, then almost certainly it's going to be better in a limited company. And it's not because of Section 24. It's not because of the tax changes on mortgage interest. Because the reality is a limited company mortgage is 50% more expensive than a personal mortgage. So all the savings you make in tax, you give to the bank. But it really is on the other side of things, when the profit comes out. It's very much on corporation tax versus personal tax. So if you're starting this business as a business and you're looking to grow your portfolio big, a limited company is always going to be right for you. And I come back to that point before. If you've got a good accountant, a good broker, a good solicitor, they're going to be advising you of these things. And that's going to really help you propel this business forward. Equally, if you're just looking to add 1 or 2 buy-to-lets and you put it in your personal name, you're still going to need an accountant, you're still going to need a solicitor. I still speak to them. Most people will give you advice for free, the same as I'm willing to. You know, I'm saying have a free call with me, because ultimately we don't know whether we're right for you or not. You know, I have paid mentoring stuff that I do, but I don't know whether I'm right for you and you're right for me until we have a free call and understand each other, you know? So I would say that personal, if you're going to be doing it as a hobby, business if you're taking it seriously. So I hope that this has given you quite a good overview of the basics of what you need to get into property. The next video, next week on Mentoring Monday, we're going to be going through all the different types of strategy. So we're going to be looking at HMOs, service accommodation, buy-to-lets. We're going to start drawing out exactly how our plan could look depending on which strategy we chose, what area we chose, and I'm going to give you some examples. So we'll go through all of that next week, but I hope you've enjoyed the first Mentoring Monday. I've been Mark Parham. Please drop me a like, give me a subscribe. I appreciate every single one of you. Any comments, I'll answer as many as I can. If you've got any questions, feel free to DM me, and I'll see you on Wednesday.